Welcome into A to Z Sports Prime Time on this Thursday night. Thanks for spending a little bit of your evening here with us. We got quarterback rankings and where Will Levis stacks up among the talent in the AFC South. We've got overlooked quarterbacks heading into 2024, and we got a little weekend bounce back to sprinkle in at the end of the show. There is huge news, though, to start about 14 minutes ago. This news broke courtesy of ESPN, and I think that certainly we're not going to talk about it tonight on primetime just because this is not the audience to do so, but the radio show tomorrow is going to take up a lot of air on this particular story because we are going to talk quarterbacks tonight, but this from ESPN that the NCAA and the power conferences have agreed to allow schools to pay players directly, and that the NCAA will pay over $2.7 billion out in damages over the next 10 years is a massive news story, even if it's not NFL or Titans related. So bet your ass we'll be talking about that tomorrow on the radio show. We'll also have Cam Wolf of the NFL Network and Coach Dave McGinnis, all of whom I'm sure will have thoughts on that particular subject, as well as some NFL news and notes. But we're here to rank some quarterbacks, and that is what tonight's objective will be. We'll see where Will Levis stacks up among the four starting quarterbacks in the AFC South. So we'll get to that here in just a second. Clayton Smith says, about time NCAA. Would have loved to get paid when I was playing college ball. I'm sure many, many people would, certainly. And that's what the House versus NCAA lawsuit was about. That's the $2.7 billion settlement that you are seeing now for players who are seeking compensation for lost name, image, and likeness value after their collegiate careers. Anyway, let's go ahead and get it started. Welcome into A to Z Sports Prime Time from the Zen Sports Studios. I'm your host, Buck Rising. If you're new to the program, welcome. We're happy to have you. And I'm proud, as always, to be presented to you by Two Rivers Ford. The best in the business is the South's most trusted Ford dealer, Two Rivers Ford, in Mount Juliet or online at tworiversford.com. TrueMav Fitness, I'll be at TrueMav Fitness tomorrow, as a matter of fact. Getting my workout in, you can get your first workout free at truemavfitness.com as a Middle Tennessee resident. And Zen Sports, plug in the promo code. I'm not going to hit it because I don't want to knock the backdrop off, but ATOZTN is where you go to get up to $100 on your no danger first wager in the Zen Sports app. Terms and conditions do apply. Levis heading into year two is in the category of one of these most overlooked quarterbacks heading into the upcoming season. I think there's a couple of reasons why. One, he's a pretty unknown commodity still at this point in his career. The only reason he's not the most unknown commodity in his own division is because Anthony Richardson has hardly played any football at all to date. So he's got that going for him to kind of level the playing field, because I don't know whether Levis or Richardson is going to be the better player. The point about either of them is I don't know much about them at all, but I do have a larger sample size of Will Levis playing football than I do of Anthony Richardson, even though I know Anthony Richardson's talent to be, the talent ceiling to be much higher than really any of the four that we're going to talk about, provided that he continue to refine and shape his skill set as an NFL quarterback. But with Levis, you have the unknown factor. You also have the idea that people outside of Tennessee stopped watching the Titans after they became non-competitive. And that's the least shocking thing at all. They're not on television very often. Most people probably didn't see them really until after the London game. And if they saw the Will Levis game against the Falcons, then they probably just saw the highlights of him throwing 4 touchdowns in his debut as opposed to actually watching the game. Thursday Night Football was the following week, and so that's a prime time slate, and he played well in that game, but they did lose. And so the country probably turned off Will Levis for the remainder of the year, unless, God help you, you had some kind of Titan skill position player on your fantasy football roster. And, the public consciousness around Will Levis moves away until such time as you come back into the offseason. You start to recheck, your depth charts on our lads and all those other things. And you realize, okay, well, maybe there's something to this Tennessee Titans quarterback, but we don't know for sure just yet, but he's interesting. So how would you stack them to date in the division? The 4 AFC South quarterbacks in no particular order: Will Levis, Anthony Richardson, Trevor Lawrence, and CJ Stroud. Which is the best among them? I think there's a pretty good case for one to be pretty obvious, though I think it gets a little more complicated as you move into 2, 3, and 4. So where would you rank Will Levis among the AFC South quarterbacks? It's your Two Rivers Ford take. It's presented by Two Rivers Ford, the South's most trusted Ford dealer. Is online at tworiversford.com. They always sell you their non-specialty Ford vehicles below MSRP, so you're always getting the best price. And they have an award-winning customer service staff that is there to help you to make the car buying process a breeze. Two Rivers Ford in Mount Juliet or online at tworiversford.com. Go pay a visit to our friends at Two Rivers Ford today. Where would you stack the AFC South quarterbacks? For Puka, she says, it's been a while, Puka, I feel like. She says Stroud, then Levis, Richardson, and Lawrence fourth. Levis, then CJ, all the other nonsense, says Devin Mills. So Devin is going Levis over the other 3 players at the position. I don't think anybody else could make that. I don't think Devin could make that case compellingly. I'll tell you right now, I'm not going to have him in the top 2 just yet. And I'm kind of back and forth on him between 3 and 4, just based on what we know about all 4 players and the fact that we know not very much about the 2 in Indianapolis and here in Tennessee. Eric stacks them this way: Stroud, Lawrence, Richardson, Levis, and he adds at the end, after ranking his quarterback 4th, tighten up. Stroud, Lawrence, Levis, Richardson for Taylor Burgess on YouTube. I think you can go back and forth on this. B. French says Trevor, CJ, AR, for Mason Rudolph better than Will Levis. So B. French clearly not buying any Will Levis hype this offseason. It's a pretty interesting thing to look at. So just to kind of go through, and counting stats aren't everything, but to just kind of go through the players and the season that they had last year, because CJ Stroud obviously doing things that no rookie quarterback has ever done in the history of the league. He was spectacular for a great many reasons. He is a player that is a really high level quarterback for a couple of different reasons. So he finishes the year with the highest quarterback rating of any of them. He, as the 2nd overall pick in that draft, after Bryce Young goes, and we'll talk about slept-on quarterbacks. When we come to, or overlooked quarterbacks, because I feel like the entirety of the world, and rightfully so, would be overlooking Bryce Young this year. But 4,557 yards passing, 26 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions. Do you know the Titans haven't had a 4,000-yard passer in 26 years, or heading into 26 years of Titans era football? And CJ Stroud walked into Houston and did it in year 1. He was excellent in 2023, and he is the top-ranked quarterback in the AFC South. There really is no argument for any other player at the position. So then I would go, me personally, even though I am very, very suspect on him to date, I would go Trevor Lawrence at this point, the Jags quarterback who is in a bit of a contract situation. He also threw for 4,000 yards last year. His touchdown to interception ratio not nearly as effective, and the turnovers did plague the Jags offense last year. 21 touchdowns to 14 interceptions. Lawrence had a subpar season. Obviously, the Jags missed the playoffs after winning a playoff game 2 years ago, and the Houston Texans were the only team to make the postseason out of the AFC South. Then I would probably see, I'm having a hard time with Anthony Richardson and Levis, because I can't in good conscience put Richardson above Levis with such a small sample size of actual football played, because the guy appeared in only 4 games last year and didn't finish. I mean, how many games did he actually end up finishing? I'm trying to look at his percentage of snaps played in the games that he did play. Yeah, he didn't finish the Titans-Colts game, which is the last game that he appeared in, and that was all the way back in week 5. He took some pretty significant hits against the LA Rams, and of course, his concussion against Houston in week 2 is the thing that cost him a game in between. So there is a part of me, though, that is just seduced by the athleticism is the wrong word, but kinda. He's the most athletic quarterback to ever test at the combine. So there is some kind of allure to that level of an athlete, especially when he has all of the same tools that Levis does. He has the size, he has the arm strength. He is the superior athlete between the two of them, but that does not necessarily make him the better quarterback. So I'm going to go Levis 3 and Richardson 4, but I'll be honest with you. I don't feel great about that because I do think that Richardson's talent ceiling is the highest of all 4 of these players. But Levis did earn the benefit of the doubt heading into this coming year. He's a solid player to date, but you're looking to see how much better he can get with the surrounding parts and pieces that they've added. And Greg and I talked about Richardson within the context of the Titans in the AFC South on this week's episode of The Install with Greg Cosell.
Yeah, and I think he's really good at what he does. But, I think Richardson is obviously the guy everyone's going to talk about. And, I went back and I looked at all of his plays from a year ago. Now, granted, he got hurt week 5 against you guys, the Titans. So he didn't have, I think he had 140 some odd plays. So I went back and I looked at each one, not only to watch him, but I was curious to see, because he has a specific skill set. It's a really high-level skill set in terms of size, arm strength, athleticism. So people know what he is just from an athletic and physical standpoint. So I was curious how the teams that were on the schedule played him, because that's, to me, that's just as important as saying, wow, he's got a big arm or he can run fast, And what I really noticed was a number of teams, including the Titans, but this is something that Shane Bowen did anyway against most teams. But you saw a lot of 5- and 6-man front looks with multiple 5-man pressure schemes. You saw a lot of late coverage rotation to multiple zone concepts. And that's something you see a lot in the league now, particularly versus young quarterbacks, is what you show pre-snap is not what you get post-snap, because young quarterbacks are not used to seeing that. You saw a lot of stunt concepts by the defensive line. You saw some of the teams, they played spy him, which, I think a lot of teams will do. But I was really struck by the pressure front looks, because then the quarterback's not sure who's coming and who's dropping. Mm-hmm. And then you get the late coverage rotation. So you saw that a lot defensively. From the standpoint of Richardson, it was clear to me that Shane Steichen sort of started the season with very basic stuff. Without going too far into the weeds, the concepts were really, by NFL standards, simple and basic, which is the smart thing to do. But as you got to week, I guess he missed a game in there somewhere, but as you got to week 4 and even to your game week 5, you started to see incrementally things start to become, a little more detailed. And of course, then he got hurt. But it'll be interesting to see as they go through the OTAs and training camp, how they start the season with him. But he's a pretty talented guy.
So that's Greg Cosell talking about Anthony Richardson. A to Z Sports Prime Time is presented by TrueMath Fitness in the Gulch. Go to TrueMathFitness.com. Get your first workout free as a Middle Tennessee resident. No workout ever recycled or repeated. I'm always looking forward to my TrueMath Fitness sessions on Friday. Little Arm Farm Friday tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. If you want to get the best workout from the best coaching staff in Middle Tennessee, go to TrueMathFitness.com and get your first workout free today. Well, maybe not today because I don't think they have any more classes today, but maybe tomorrow if you're so inclined. Get your weekend off to a great start. So some comments on the quarterbacks and how you guys would stack them. Let's see. No tape can benefit a quarterback. I don't know what the hell that means. B French says of Anthony Richardson, Vince Young also had the tools as well. Well, I mean, I think you could say the very same about Will Levis. Levis has yet to put it together in any kind of concrete fashion. Devin Mills says of my rankings, Richardson lasted 4 games, which is accurate. Lawrence has never won a playoff game, which is inaccurate because Trevor Lawrence and the Jacksonville Jaguars were the beneficiaries of a just wild Chargers implosion, second half implosion, where Lawrence had thrown several interceptions in the first half of that game. The Chargers collapsed in the second half, and ultimately the Jags that won the division in 2022, I think that was the season with Dobbs at the end of the year. Yeah, 2022, they did win a playoff game that year. So technically, Trevor Lawrence is the only quarterback. Well, no, because Stroud won a playoff game last year. So Stroud and Lawrence are the only 2 quarterbacks in the division, obviously, who have won a playoff game. Neither of them have more than 1 playoff win to date. Bossman Jem says one of the stupider comments that I've seen in recent memory, Richardson isn't good. Well, you don't know that yet. You have no idea. And you got swept by the Colts with Gardner Minshew last year. So I don't know that necessarily Titans fans throwing shade at the Colts right now is something that you have the entitlement to do, even though you did win the 5 straight previous. Richardson isn't good, so I don't think that's accurate. I don't know that that's accurate, but I know you don't either. He says he's a running back playing quarterback, which is, of course, completely ridiculous because the 2-time MVP of the league, Lamar Jackson, is also somebody who was hit with that stigma, and that is some of the dumbest shit that I've ever heard in my life. Anthony Richardson is the 4th overall pick. He's the most athletic quarterback to ever test at the scouting combine. And Boss Man Jem tops it off with the final point to his inaccurate statement on Richardson's inaccuracies. Not realizing that Anthony Richardson, understanding it was only in 4 games, but Anthony Richardson was more accurate last season by completion percentage than Will Levis was. So all 3 of those statements I take issue with. I hate the idea that people look at quarterbacks who possess athleticism and try to pigeonhole them as running backs. I think that's some of the dumber conversation around quarterbacks. I think it's going to continue to happen, even though the athletes at quarterback have never been as good as they are right now, and they're only going to continue to get better. Are you looking at Josh Allen and saying, oh, look at that, that's a running back playing quarterback, even though he's the primary source of the Buffalo Bills rushing attack? No dipshit is going to look at Josh Allen and say, no, he's a running back playing quarterback, which is one of the dumbest things I think that people use in a lack of understanding of the athletes playing the position, or just generally a lack of understanding about the position. So, like I said, I think that is one of the least intelligent comments that I've seen regarding quarterback play. I don't know what Richardson is. I don't know that he's good, but I sure as hell don't know that he's bad. And I know that Anthony Richardson has all the tools, just as Will Levis has all the tools to be able to succeed. The question about both of them is whether they put it all together or not. Jacob Ray says McNair wasn't accurate until 5 years in. Yeah, I'm sure as hell not going to judge. I'm sure as hell not going to judge any quarterback based on their first year, especially when that sample size is as small as Richardson's is. And honestly, the thing about Richardson that makes it even crazier is he hardly played at all in college too. So we really have no idea what this player is. There's not a ton of precedent for Anthony Richardson and how small the sample size of starts was in college. Not since Trey Lance have we seen a quarterback who's played as little football who went as high in the draft order as he does. And I think there's already reason to believe that he's more competent than Trey Lance was based on even the four games that we have seen to date. So it is going to be a really, really interesting case study in the AFC South year, but I don't think that you could put Will Levis any higher than 3rd or possibly 4th among the AFC quarterbacks, depending on what your opinion of Richardson is. So I do think that Will Levis fits the category of overlooked heading into 2024, just generally when we talk about quarterbacks. And the question that I want to ask you is, who is the most overlooked quarterback heading into 2024? Is it Levis, or is it somebody else, another position battle or another quarterback battle that we're not talking about, another starter who's getting an opportunity, a journeyman who is going to have the opportunity to get a fresh start. There's a couple of examples of those this year around the NFL, and we'll get to those here in just a second. So who is the most overlooked quarterback in 2024, heading into 2024? You guys tell me in the comment section, and I will tell you that the Primetime program is made possible by Zen Sports. Plug in the promo code that you see over my left shoulder there, ATOZTN. Get up to $100 on your no danger first wager in the Zen Sports app, no matter what of your favorite major sports you are wagering on. Zen Sports is there to help you get betting and make it better. ZenSports.com for more information. Must be 21 plus and in the state of Tennessee to bet. Terms and conditions do apply. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-889-9789 for more details. All right, so who's the most overlooked quarterback in the NFL heading into 2024? Jonathan Caverly says Tannehill. Not even signed, and definitely a top 30 QB. That's interesting. I don't know how many people are going to make the argument for Tannehill. And he's not signed because he doesn't want to sign yet. I can't imagine that he would sign until a training camp opportunity or until training camp gets underway. I don't think he wants any part of OTAs and shit like that because he's probably not going to be a starting player right out of the gate. He probably will start games in 2024, no matter where he lands, just because of the nature of injuries. B. French also says Tannehill. I don't know if that's in jest. William on Facebook Live says Minshew. Rishi says Justin Fields, sitting there behind Russell Wilson. Devin says Tanny is a top 20 quarterback. All right, let's not get crazy. Buzz Reisinger, not to be mistaken for Buck Rising, says Levis has not only looked, he's been disrespected since before day one. I don't know if he's disrespected. What about who is disrespected Will Levis? And what is the nature of this alleged disrespect? Because I'll go along with the idea of overlooked, but this is somebody who was talked about as a potential first-round pick, potentially had his 2022 season not been, I don't think it was a disaster, but it was really poor relative to expectation. That he played through injury. His talent was worse around him, and that's why his performance suffered. But I don't think that's disrespect. I think that's just a fair analysis of the situation. So I'm looking at Levis and seeing, overlooked certainly heading into this year because nobody was looking at him last year. Really, he wasn't on a competitive football team. Why would anybody pay attention to him in 2023? But I think that disrespect, I don't know that anybody's disrespecting Will Levis. There's like the Titans in 2024, there's no real reason to respect him just yet among his peers. Derek Wright says, do we have enough cash to pick up Justin Simmons? Yes, you certainly do, but there's a reason that he's not signing yet. He's looking for the best possible offer and the best possible contending team, and that I don't know that the Titans necessarily fit the best possible contending team for Justin Simmons' services, though I do think the fit makes a lot of sense there. Weekend bounce back is what we will wrap up with in the comment section on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and on Twitch. Who needs to bounce back most in sports this weekend? We got the Pacers, who are out here trying to bounce back from a hideous choke job in game one of the Eastern Conference Finals in overtime against the Celtics. You have the T-Wolves, who could certainly use a bounce back after another poor performance from Anthony Edwards, this time in game one against the Mavs. Have not been paying that close attention to the Stanley Cup playoffs, so perhaps there's a bounce back candidate roaming around in there for you. Harrison Butker, pretty good bounce back candidate. Everybody wants to talk about the misogynistic kicker as of late. We haven't really done that here on Primetime, but if you want Butker to be your bounce back candidate, so be it. I am going to tell you who mine is right after I remind you that the Primetime program is made possible by the Ashton Real Estate Group of RE/MAX Advantage. Go to GaryAshton.com. Get your dream address without the stress. Get the intel edge you need to succeed with the official real estate agent of the Nashville Predators at GaryAshton.com. My bounce back candidate is going to be the Indiana Pacers. Like I said, a hideous choke job in game one of the Eastern Conference Finals. Rick Carlisle mismanaged the end of the game. He was at the podium after game one, the loss in overtime to Boston, and said as much about his own mistakes as a coach.
This loss is totally on me. With 10 seconds in regulation, we should have just taken the timeout, advanced the ball. and found a way to get it in and made a free throw or two and ended the game. But it didn't happen, and we made some other mistakes, but our guys just need to concentrate on fighting the way they fought in this game from start to finish, and we'll be back Thursday.
So that is Rick Carlisle speaking on the choke job by the Indiana Pacers at the end of Game 1. Game 2 underway right now in the Eastern Conference Finals in the NBA. Boston trailing Indiana at home 25-22, but it is still the first quarter of that game. About a minute and a half left to play in that first quarter. Let's see. Boss Man says of Levis, he's disrespected everywhere. They literally have rookies ranked ahead of him. Come Buck, don't act like you don't know. Okay, it's a weird way to say it. It's just an odd way to phrase that. Well, yeah, but that's a dipshit. That's a dumbass like FanDuel sports ranking in like March before the draft even happened. So is that disrespect? No, that's FanDuel understanding that the only way to get any kind of engagement that's worth a damn about the Titans is to piss Titans fans off. That doesn't mean anything. That doesn't mean anything to me. It's not real. Who's actually disrespecting him? Like, are you that disrespected by some random ass sports book putting together a ranking of quarterbacks pre-draft before the quarterback? That's before Russell Wilson was even a Pittsburgh Steeler. Like the idea that you guys, that some of you guys, it's not all of you guys, but I think this is a great example because who gives a shit about where FanDuel Sportsbook ranked quarterbacks before the draft? That's your greatest disrespect because that's the only example that you're citing me. All right, cool. He's ranked 32 out of 32 quarterbacks before Russell Wilson gets moved to the Pittsburgh Steelers, before Justin Fields gets moved to the Pittsburgh Steelers, because I believe that ranking had those two quarterbacks in two different spots. And of course, they're on the same team now. So like, why anybody would have any level of disrespect, investment, or otherwise in a ranking that clearly doesn't mean anything at all, that's more on you than it is on the ranking, because it's accomplished. The ranking is accomplished then what it sought to do, which is to bother you, to get you to talk about it, to get you to quote tweet it, to give you impressions, and you know, I mean, disrespect, because he adds national media has a lot of them ahead of him also. Okay, they should be. They're probably in better situations. What has Will Levis done to prove anything? You guys act like he had a losing record. He won half as many games as he lost. He had 8 touchdowns and 4 interceptions. He had 1,800 passing yards. What, you want me to make him a top 10 quarterback based on that sample size on a terrible football team? No. You expect people to do the same, to give you the benefit of the doubt? Why would anybody give Will Levis or the Tennessee Titans the benefit of the doubt? They've won what? 13 games in the last 2 seasons combined, and they probably don't even have any business winning that many games, because shit like the Miami game happens, and you look around and say afterwards, like, how does that? They were not the better team in the Miami game. How on earth does that happen? And sometimes the explanation is just football does weird shit sometimes. So like the idea that anybody would look at Will Levis as having done anything worth respect in the league beyond his season, beyond his career debut, which was back in like October, there's nothing yet to stand on if you're making the argument for Will Levis as requiring more respect. He's a quarterback with a losing record who was on a team with a losing record last year. What do you expect people to do with him? It's only the most obvious thing in the world. So if you want to get caught up in the homerism of it, I think that's entirely on you, but I don't understand why people have this inflated sense of Will Levis or their football team when the results to date have been shitty. And so of course people are going to look at you that way. It's incumbent upon your football team to prove them wrong, but they haven't done that yet. They won't do that for several more months. So how anybody would get ahead of themselves on Will Levis before a single snap in the 2024 season has been played is completely ludicrous to me. All right. So yeah, that's the show. Thank you guys for hanging out with us. It's going to be a loaded radio show tomorrow. We've got this news that just came down a few minutes ago that the NCAA and the power conferences in college athletics have agreed to allow schools to pay players. That's going to take up so much of what we talk about tomorrow. The NCAA also scheduled to pay out over $2.7 billion in damages over the next 10 years. So we'll do that from 10 to 1 on 104.5 The Zone. We'll have Coach Dave McGinnis of Titans Radio to talk OTAs, and Will Levis. We'll have Cameron Wolf of the NFL Network, who has been at Miami's OTAs, where they also have a quarterback who is regularly. Tua is actually disrespected. Like, if you want to talk about quarterbacks who get disrespected, the idea that Tua has the statistical success that he does, and people continue to look at him as less than, even though all he's done under Mike McDaniel is producing the system, that's an actual quarterback that's been disrespected. So we'll hear from Cam Wolf on the NFL Network on overlooked quarterbacks and how he views Will Levis tomorrow at 12:20, I think is when Cam's going to join us. So that'll be a good time. Have a great weekend if I don't talk to you before, or if I don't talk to you tomorrow. And no prime time on Sunday or Monday because we'll be off for the long weekend. So the next time that we talk to you on prime time, it will be Tuesday night. And I'll look forward to getting back together with you guys then. See y'all.
Go home! Go home! Go home! You're embarrassing Nashville! Go home!